to be at Cafe Con Tampa, back at Cafe Con Tampa in person. I want to thank Councilman Bill Carlson and Dale for the invitation to be here. I want to thank all of you for getting up early on a Friday morning to come talk about criminal justice. So let's talk about criminal justice. The United States has roughly the same crime rate as the rest of the world, and we incarcerate 5 times as many people. Our drug laws are harsher than that of Europe, and yet we have 10 times the drug overdose death rate. This is the land of economic opportunity, yet we criminalize poverty to a staggering degree. The principles that underlie our criminal justice system are the model for the entire world, yet here at home, every single day, we fail to live up to them. No wonder there's been such a demand for reform. So when I ran in 2016, I laid out a bold vision for criminal justice reform. And that phrase, reform, has come to mean so many different things, policies and practices, but at its heart, reform is about an idea. The idea that we have to focus on the long-term impact of what we do every day in the system. How do we make our neighborhoods safer in the long run? How do we reduce crime? What's the impact of arrest and prosecution and incarceration on a person, on that person's family, on a community? Criminal justice reform is about taking a strategic, long-term problem-solving approach to issues that we see every day in the system. Since the day I got into office, I have asked, encouraged my colleagues to think about the cases in front of them not as people to be prosecuted, but as problems to be solved. So what does that look like in practice? Well, it starts with triage. And what do I mean by triage? It means we have to recognize that there are different types of people who come through the criminal justice system. There are people who are bad people intent on doing bad things. And for those people, we have to do everything we can to prevent them from victimizing our neighbors. But not everybody who comes through the system is a bad person intent on doing a bad thing. People get caught up in the system because of mental illness, substance abuse, kids doing the stupid things that kids do because they're poor. We need a different approach for those types of offenders. That's why in the state attorney's office, we have been reforming our juvenile justice system to steer kids away from the downward spiral of the system. Why, for people who suffer from mental illness and substance abuse, we have embraced rehabilitation and treatment rather than incarceration and punishment. Why we've tried to minimize the poverty traps that lead to the criminalization of poverty. We treated victims differently, making sure that we are working on their behalf to achieve justice and expanding their access to resources in the community. Reform is about police and prosecutor accountability, conviction integrity, addressing racial disparities, using data-driven approaches, all these different policies that further the mission, what any prosecutor's mission should be, notice the should, of increasing public safety and promoting justice and fairness. Now, it's important to remember that we can actually further that mission outside the walls of the courthouse. My office has been involved with prevention programs, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or mentorship programs that you've never heard of, things that keep people out of the criminal justice system before they ever hear the clicking sound of handcuffs. It's why I get involved in legislation up in Tallahassee and in Washington, whether it's the Victims' Rights Amendment or Amendment 4 or House Bill 1 that just came up. Now, making my voice around these issues gets me in trouble sometimes because there are people who want me to sit quietly in a courtroom and be a prosecutor. But I didn't run to sit quietly in a courtroom and be a prosecutor. I ran to be an agent of change in our system at a time when it was desperately needed, here in Hillsborough, across our state, and across our country. Now, change in the criminal justice system goes beyond just those policies and programs that I've been talking about. If we really want to change the system, we have to rethink, even reimagine aspects of policing, prosecution, and punishment. 3 Ps. For police, for example, what do we expect out of law enforcement? And are those expectations reasonable? Are law enforcement officers just the people who show up to arrest the bad guy? Or are they also first responders, mental health providers? Are they community ambassadors who we expect to play basketball and fix a flat tire? For prosecutors, I've talked about the need to be more than just a punisher and instead a problem solver. But we need to make sure we're solving problems with a commitment on public safety while upholding the fairness and justice that our system demands and being efficient with the use of government resources. For punishment, we have to make sure we're rebalancing punishment versus the other goals of the system, prevention and rehabilitation. And when we're talking about the ultimate punishment, incarceration, who are we incarcerating? For how long? At what cost? With what goals in mind? I've talked a lot about the policies and programs and the philosophy of criminal justice, but true change in the criminal justice system goes beyond the criminal justice system. You have to recognize the intersection between criminal justice, economics, and education. Criminal justice does not operate in a vacuum, and we can't pretend it does if we want to improve it. Economics provide opportunities for people. Education provides the pathways to fulfill those opportunities and to create more of them in the future. And when there are not opportunities in our community, crime goes up. So if we really want to shrink the footprint of criminal justice, we need to expand the footprint of economics and education. We need to make sure that every child has access to high-quality education to give him and her the opportunity to succeed academically. We need to make sure that the economy grows in a way that can benefit everybody. The changes that I'm talking about don't happen overnight. If they did, I would have flipped the switch already. Creating long-lasting, impactful change in the criminal justice system takes time, a long time. But policy by policy, program by program, idea by idea, we change the way people think about criminal justice. So that a generation from now, that bold vision of today has become the reality of tomorrow. Questions?